Good afternoon and welcome to the Respectability webinar for October 18th, 2016. My name is Philip Polly. I am the Policy and Practices Director for Respectability, and I'm very excited to be here with you today. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And I want to wish everyone a happy National Disability Employment Awareness Month. This is the month which was inaugurated by Congress 75 years ago to celebrate the challenges and opportunities impacting disability employment. And there's a lot of issues involved. And one of them that doesn't get as much credit as it needs is the issue of financial security and access to credit and self-employment, entrepreneurship, and kind of all of the related challenges that come with the endemic cycle of poverty and challenge that people with disabilities face. And so today we're going to be talking about the Iowa ABLE Foundation. Some of you may have heard of it, some of you may have not. The webinar is going to give you kind of an interesting run-through with their approach to tackling poverty, to expanding opportunity, overcoming stigma related to disability. Thank you for joining us for this webinar. We would not be able to offer these webinars if it wasn't for the generous support of J.P. Morgan Chase & Company. They have supported our webinar series this year. They allow us to provide closed captioning and to provide these to you for free. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Chase for making this possible. And so today we're talking about the Iowa ABLE Foundation, and we're joined today with a special guest by the name of Jill Crosser, who is the Executive Director of the Iowa ABLE Foundation. Prior to joining the Iowa ABLE team, she worked as a neuro-resource facilitator with the Brain Injury Alliance of Iowa and has experience as a case management with the Elder Care Waiver, working with job placement as well. Jill received her undergraduate degree in Family Services, Criminology, and Women's Studies from the University of Northern Iowa, and her master's degree in Rehabilitation Administration from the Drake University. I'm quoting from a little bio that she sent me when we were organizing this. The need for skills and knowledge that successfully enable low and moderate income individuals and individuals with disabilities to become part of the financial mainstream by learning to manage their finances, participate in banking services and safer assets, and other financial goals are often underestimated. Working for Iowa ABLE with our Lending, Educating, and Advancing initiative has been a rewarding experience. Helping each other reach goals is at the forefront of what we do every day. Finance and assets are at the core to our stability. And so today we're hoping to have a good conversation. You can submit your questions at any time using the chat window on the left of the presentation screen. To submit your questions at the bottom of the chat window, locate the little downward arrow at the right, select moderators, type in your question, and we will get to it either during the presentation or towards the end. I'm very excited to be joined by Jill today. Thank you very much, and please take it away.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining the webinar. You know, and as a piece of National Disability Employment Awareness Month, I think this fits perfectly with the initiatives that this brings to our communities, and I will be talking about employment with people with disabilities and giving you some direct examples as well. So today, to start, I'm going to talk to you about our lending program called the Iowa ABLE Foundation, and provide you examples of some of our borrowers that have successfully started their own business or been given the opportunity to work with our support. Talk a little bit about some of our financial coaching initiatives and other statistical pieces that we're seeing in Iowa when it comes to working with people that are underbanked or unbanked. So please slide over to the next slide here. The Iowa ABLE mission statement is that we are assisting Iowans with disabilities, their families, and the aging to achieve and maintain independence through lending, educating, and advancing. And I really feel like these three words, the lending, educating, and advancing, are really the core components of who we are. We are a lender. We hold a loan license in the state of Iowa. We're a microlender, which means we're the smallest lender in the state of Iowa. Which just maxes out the dollar amount that you can lend out, and we do not hold a loan license. I will get into detail later with what we lend for and the programs that we work with the lending piece, but we are an accessible borrowing option. We're an alternative to a bank. We're typically working with folks that are underbanked or unbanked, maybe don't have a credit score, or they have a really bad credit score, or they maybe have had some financial struggles in the past and they need some help repairing. The educating piece is our financial education that we provide to all of our prospective and current borrowers. We have 2 financial coaches on staff that are working alongside of individuals one-on-one. We don't have generalized goals. We have individualized goals. So we're working directly with an individual, taking a look at what's on that credit report, taking a look at debt versus income, seeing what's left at the end of the month, and planning accordingly with goals and goal setting. The advancing piece is really focused on our final goal of advancing Iowans into mainstream lending. Our goal is to help make Iowans educated and become bankable so that they can go to their local credit union or bank and open up a checking account or open up a savings account or take a loan out, while going back to the education piece of making smart decisions while doing that. For example, staying away from payday lending and things like that. Working with reputable organizations that are reporting to credit bureaus and helping them build assets. So a little bit of history about the Iowa ABLE Foundation here. Iowa ABLE serves all of Iowa. We're located in Ames, which is central Iowa near Des Moines. We are serving all Iowans with disabilities and their families and the aging community. So when folks come to us, they usually have a need of a thing or a device or a repair, whether it be a home modification or a vehicle modification. Maybe they're just trying to build credit and they need a credit builder loan. Whatever it is that they need just needs to correlate with their disability. For example, an individual who needs a ramp on their home obviously needs that so that they can get in and out of their house. In terms of credit building and credit loans of $100 to $500, we designate those funds to lend out to folks that have no credit score or a lack of credit. So in addition to the loans with the flexible terms, we also offer, like I said, the financial coaching and education. We do report to the credit bureau, which is a huge asset. A lot of folks that we work with are renting, maybe borrowing from places like payday lending, and nothing positive is getting reported to their credit reports. So that is a big piece of what we do. And then we're also a referral source to other resources in the community. Just a quick little tidbit of history here. We were established in 1993 by the Iowa Program for Assistive Technology. We still have a contract with them. We are providing loans for things like assistive technology with the funds that they give us every month, or every year rather, through that contract. Some of our supporters and sponsors are Wellmark, Bankers Trust, Principal Financial Group. We just recently became a partner agency with the United Way of Story County, IPAT, and Viridian Credit Union. Into the loan uses, when folks come to us, they, like I mentioned earlier, they have a need. They have something that they need to purchase. An assistive technology, we work very closely with the Easter Seals AT program, and that is any item, piece of equipment, device, product, anything that you can think of, and assistive technology is so wide. Anything that is used to improve functional capabilities, mobility, or quality of life. This can be a hearing aid, it can be computers, it can be a piece of medical device. We've had dentures, we have had like orthotics for your feet, down to more specific medical devices. Home modifications, any modification made to the home that allows for greater accessibility, independence, and quality of life. Maybe taking out that carpet to put hardwood floors because someone is in a wheelchair in the home. Widening doorways, adding the ramp to the home, making an accessible kitchen, things like that. Self-employment, startup, and expansion, which I will focus on in just a little bit, a couple slides later, so I don't want to go too far into that. But we do provide loans to Iowans who want to start their own business or that just want to work but they need some kind of an accommodation, or they need tools or something like that to help them become more employable. And I'll talk about our partners with that as well. Home repair loans. This is another one that we usually see with the aging community. They're coming to us needing a roof, needing a window that's been broke. They're getting water in their house. Anything that's going to inhibit them from staying in their home, or that they're at risk of losing their home because of this situation. That's where we come in and can help with that type of a thing. And then we also have our credit builder loan, which is $100 to $500 paid back over 6 to 12 months. We are offering intensive financial coaching with the individuals during that payback period. We are reporting their monthly payments to the credit bureau to start that process of positive marks on a credit report. And then once a loan is paid off, sometimes we will look at a series of them and do another one, two $500 ones over a year or 2 years or whatever the situation may be. Okay. I can give you some examples of some of the assistive technology that we have lent money out for, and this is just a list. Braille equipment, voice systems, scanners, like I said, computers or any kind of adaptive device for someone to be able to see their computer, communication systems, all of those. Like I said, assistive technology is so big. We work in partnership with a lot of audiologists on hearing devices as well. Home modifications, repairs, I kind of went over this as well. We have a lot of folks needing, like, for an example, an air conditioner in the summer, and they have breathing issues. They may have COPD or something like that, and they need a window air conditioner, new roof, flooring, ramps, things like that. The business employment loans. Loan funds may be used for adaptive equipment or modifications required to work for an employer. Equipment required to start or expand a business. If they're working with self-employment, maybe working with Evoke Rehab, or any kind of other program like that, and then startup or expansion capital. Now, before I go into too many details with some of the examples of what we have done in the past, this ADA piece, I think, is a good intro to working with folks who want to work, and always remembering the key of what the ADA, the core of what the ADA is, so that when we're assisting individuals, this is really at the core, and having them understand what it means too, so that all rights can be preserved. So I'll just quickly go through the ADA, although you all probably already know what it is. It does make it illegal for employers to discriminate against qualified individuals who have a disability. Oftentimes we hear, well, this person might need modifications that I can't afford, or whatever the situation may be, and that's where Evoke Rehab, the state agencies come in handy. They can help pay for devices. That's where we come in if they need a loan for that kind of a thing. And it also gives you the right to a reasonable accommodation, such as an interpreter for people who are deaf, readers for people who are blind, modification of a workstation, or a provision of paid travel assistance and essential travel. And I see this got really small. I apologize for this. But the ADA does not guarantee you a job. It does not give you a competitive advantage or edge. It does not guarantee that you won't be discriminated against, and it won't make the job search easy. Here, are you all able to see the slides okay?
Yes, we can see it just fine.
Okay, good. Working with a disability, I threw in some stats here as I intro some of the folks that we've worked with here at Iowa Able, just for kind of an eye-opener, and also because it is National Disability Employment Awareness Information. In 2014, 34.4% of U.S. civilians with disabilities aged 18 to 64 living in the community were employed, compared to the 75% of people without disabilities, a gap of 41%. And I don't know about you, but that's a pretty good number to me. Employment rates are highest for people with hearing disabilities and vision disabilities, the lowest for people with self-care disabilities and independent disabilities. In 2014, the median earnings of U.S. Folks with disabilities ages 16 and over was $21,000, about two-thirds of the median earnings of the people without disabilities. And as we just closed out our fiscal year 16, we took a look at stats and monthly and annual incomes and credit scores, and I have to say I'm pretty impressed that the average credit score of the folks that we approved loans for was 634. It's a very average score. It's not as low as I think we anticipate seeing when we're working with this population. 28% of the U.S. Individuals with disabilities of working age in 2014 were living in poverty. For U.S. civilians working age without disabilities, the national poverty rate was 13.3%. And again, I apologize for how small that is on your screen. Into some of the Iowa statistics, 46% of working age people with disabilities in Iowa are working one way or another. They're working, and this puts us third in the nation, right behind South Dakota and North Dakota. And this information was pulled from the Voc Rehab folks over in Des Moines. And I have to say that I'm really proud of that number as well, and it's through initiatives such as Voc Rehab and the work that they're doing as well that number is as high as it is. But then we also have to look that there is 35.7 percentage point gap in the labor force. So we are continually working to help folks with disabilities get into the workforce. Gosh, this is so small, you guys. I am so sorry. I just have a little bit of information here about Voc Rehab, and I will probably just jump back to this piece because I'm sure that most of you are familiar with the Voc Rehab services within your state, and I want to move forward and kind of relate back to the Voc Rehab piece with the individuals that we're working with here.
And Jill, I just would like to also quickly interject that if anyone wants more detailed information about vocational rehabilitation in Iowa, Respectability over the summer hosted 2 different webinars that you can find on our website. So if you want more detailed information from David Mitchell, go to our website. It's respectabilityusa.org/webinars. So.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you for that. And I'm actually the co-chair of the SRC, which is the governing body for the Voc Rehab program in this state. So I've been involved with that now for, 5 or 6 years now, 5 or 6 years, somewhere in there. So I'm pretty closely connected with the folks over there too, and it's a great group. So yes, I would love for you to ask questions if you have them. The first business loan example that I want to share with you is Aaron. Aaron lives down in southern Iowa, kind of in a rural area. There's not a whole lot going on in the town he lives in. He grew up in this community, didn't really want to leave after graduation. He struggles with some ADHD issues, and physically I think he feels good. He's able to work. He just had some problems with some attention, and also struggled in school, didn't really want to go and get a college degree, but was able to go in the trade piece of employment. And Aaron needed a toolbox and some tools to become a mechanic. And I guess I wasn't as aware of this until I started working with more folks in this field. But when you want to become a mechanic, it's pretty typical that you have to have your own tools. And for a young, I think Aaron was probably around 19 or 20 when he first came to us 5 years ago. He was young, didn't have a credit score, he lived at home. He didn't have anything reporting to the credit bureau. I think his parents had a credit card, and he was an authorized user just to kind of jumpstart things for him as he entered adulthood through his transition piece. But Aaron applied for a loan with us, didn't have a credit score, really had no job history. He had Social Security income, and we were able to fund the tools that he needed to become employable. So he could go apply for jobs, and when they said, "Do you have the tools you need?" he said yes. About 2 years later, the loan was paid in full, and he decided at that time he wanted to splurge and get a Snap-on toolbox to put his tools in to make sure they were safe, secure, and now he's on his second loan with us, and his credit score now is over 700. I will say, he's also maybe 6 years older than he was, so since then he was able to take out a credit card and things like that. But I think just having that first loan with a organization like ours that is a little bit more one-on-one, a little bit more personal. If he struggled, most recently he just had surgery about a month ago, and he called and said, hey, I'm really struggling with my payment this month. I'm off work. I'm on short-term disability. I don't know how much it's going to be. My doctor thinks I'm going to be back to work in 6 weeks. No problem. We can report a $0 payment to the credit bureau this month, and that way he doesn't get dinged. So we're able to work with individuals, especially with their disability. People get sick, people have surgery, people are off work, and we want to help build their credit and not hurt their credit. So we're able to work with individuals to get them to the next level. So Aaron is on his second diesel mechanic job now in the last 5 years. He's happy. He's on his way to getting off of benefits. He's working full-time and doing great. So that is one example. Another one here is Joe. And Joe actually came to us through the Easter Seals Rural Solutions Program. And he was working with them to get some adaptive equipment so that he could farm. He wasn't able to get up into his machines physically. He was having some issues with that. So Easter Seals was able to fit him to the adaptations that he needed for his tractor so that he could continue to work and farm his land. And we were able to provide him with a loan to get the accommodations on his tractor so that he could continue to work. I think Joe was at a point in his life where if he didn't get some help, he was probably going to have to quit working. And that would have obviously changed a lot for him in his life. He would be at home all day. He wouldn't be earning the money that he was earning. And Joe has been a very successful businessman for many, many years. So had 2 or 3 loans with us as well now. And that Hyundai you see in the picture is something that we're holding for collateral on his loan. Okay. So piggybacking and talking a little bit more about the employment piece, just an interesting piece here is despite shrinking funding and throughout, not just in Iowa, other places throughout the country, people with disabilities are almost 2 times as likely to start a business as a non-disabled individual. Folks come to us all the time with, I want to start a business. Maybe they have a business plan in place. Maybe they've worked with Voc Rehab. Maybe they've worked with a small business district in their community. Maybe they have no idea what any of that is. They're just starting this journey and heard about us, and we kind of help them figure out which path they need to go down. And I should have entered a slide here about one of our board members. You can find her on our website. Her name is M. Hillman. She stands out with this slide to me because M has significant intellectual disabilities, and through Voc Rehab's help, she was able to start and operate her own coffee shop in Independence, Iowa. And maybe some of you on here are aware of M. Go ahead.
Hi, Jill. This is Philip. Actually just posted in the chat box a link to the profile that Respectability wrote a couple months ago about M's coffee shop. So forgive me, I didn't even realize she was connected to you guys.
Yes.
Our team has, in the course of covering the Iowa caucus, got to visit M's coffee shop and really loved it because, Independence, as Senator Harkin says, is kind of a one-lane town, and this coffee shop has become a focal point, gathering grounds, if you will, for folks. And so anyone on the webinar today, check out that link in the chat box. It gives you kind of a pretty detailed experience, kind of insight into M's story, how she went from being trapped in a sheltered workshop environment, found her path to independence, and is now an independent business owner. So.
Yes. And M and her mom are board members of the Iowa Able Foundation and have been pieces to the employment piece of our business piece of our lending. M's great, and if you haven't heard her story, I would absolutely check it out. If you have some time today, you can like her on Facebook. Bill Clinton was actually in her coffee shop last week when he was in town, so she let us know that he ordered an Americana, and he was telling her about Senator Harkin. Senator Harkin was over at the White House one day, and they were trying to make a phone call to his brother who is deaf, and they were using some assistive technology to make that happen. And I think that was a big eye-opener for Bill Clinton, working with folks with disabilities and seeing it in front of him as well. So, yeah, Em is a great example of what can happen. We did not provide a loan to Em, but she didn't need a business loan because Voc Rehab provided her with a grant, or she was awarded a grant through Voc Rehab. But her 7th anniversary of her business is coming up here next month. So for 7 years, she has been successfully operating her coffee shop. She has a job coach with her at all times. Her grandmother does the baking, and her mom stops in a lot. She just works down the road and helps out as well. So I feel that her story is really relevant to this slide about the shrinking funding, because we know Voc Rehab services are available, but we also know that they're not widely available all the time. There are wait lists. There's funding, pieces of funding that we wait on and things like that. But something's happening, and, if people with disabilities are almost 2 times as likely to start a business as non-disabled individuals, I have to say that we're doing something right. Into the next slide here, I want to talk a little bit about building credit. Building credit is so important, and we're really trying to focus with the transition aged youth that are transitioning out of, child services into adult services as they enter this new world of, living on their own or in a group home or whatever it may be. Building credit and building assets is a focus of what we do here. And like I mentioned earlier, our credit builder loans are a series of $100 to $500 paid back over 6 to 12 months, working with a financial coach. What are your goals? What do you want to accomplish here? What's your final? Do you want to end up having the credit score to be able to buy a car? Are you wanting to get a house? What does this look like for you? And like I said, we do report to all 3 credit bureaus, so that is a big component of what we do here to help folks build credit and assets as well. Just a little bit of loan program information here. I started in fiscal year 12 as a program manager and kind of ramped up the loan program when we moved to Ames. And in fiscal year 13, we had 45 approved loans scattered throughout the state. Dipped down a little bit in 14, but lent more dollar. The dollar amount was a little bit higher. Fiscal year 16, we did 47. In fiscal year 16, we closed with 48 loans, which is continuing to be record-breaking approved loans. We had 133 incoming applications. Some of those folks may still be pending. Some withdrew. Some ended up not needing what they originally applied for, whatever it may be. And here's that average credit score of the folks from fiscal year 16, and that was 613. And again, I was surprised that number was as high as it was, but we want to continue to help folks get their scores even higher. 90% of the clients that we work with are borrowers. Can refer to them as borrowers as well. They are low to moderate income. They're on a Social Security or Social Security disability income. Some are working part-time or, have self-employment or working on starting a business or whatever that may be. But 90% of them are low to moderate income, and many clients have poor to fair credit. 613 would be considered in the fair area of credit scores. So why we're focusing so much on financial education? This is an initiative that we really started pushing. We always wanted, but really, really started pushing in the last 2 years. We know that there's little federal or private attention given to this study, and it costs money for people. There's credit agencies out there that charge people to to do what we're doing for them for free. Financial education is often understudied, unfunded, unrecognized, and it's just a piece of the puzzle in reducing poverty. But to help folks really become independent and self-sufficient, they have to know what's going on in their finances. They have to know how to look after themselves as far as, being a victim of identity theft. They have to know how to pull their credit report and most importantly, know how to read it. And through our financial education, these initiatives are at the forefront of what we're doing with folks. There's always budgeting, skills that we put in there. We have group financial classes throughout the state. We've got a couple coming up here in Ames and Des Moines. But we're working not only with their individual goals, which may be budgeting, it may be paying off a few collection accounts, whatever that may be, but it's also looking at ahead into the future of, pull your credit report every year. Let's review it. Let's see what's on there. Is there anything new? Put Credit Karma on your phone, things like that. And in addition to our financial education, we get a lot of our funding through grants and through other community partners such as banks. Banks also want to see people, Iowans in our state, understand their finances. So we have partnered with several banks, Vision Bank, Bankers Trust, and they're helping to sponsor some of our group classes. We received a grant through the United Way of Story County to provide free financial coaching classes here in the county, which we're now expanding out into other counties as well. As far as best practices in providing our financial education, these are just skills that go no matter what population you're working with. I stuck a slide in there as a reminder to always use people first language. By doing this, we're putting the person before the disability. While coaching folks, we have to sometimes remember that their journey has not been comparable to ours. We may have had credit started for us a lot sooner than others. We may not have had the disability that disabled them from working. A lot of folks are coming to us in that transition period of, I became disabled, I lost my job of a large income, and now I'm on this other Social Security disability income, and it's much smaller, and now I'm trying to adapt to this, and I'm trying to understand it. And so that sometimes can be very difficult for folks, and when we're working with them, we always keep in mind that their journey is not always like ours. Making materials accessible, providing accommodations. We've got a group financial class coming, and there's several folks from the Iowa Department for the Blind coming, so they're going to be bringing devices and things so that folks can see the screen in the classroom. And then a biggie for me is know where to refer. We have a lot of folks that come to us, say, with the need for a home modification, and sometimes there are grants available through USDA or wherever it may be, their county. Knowing where to refer folks to help them, LIHEAP to help them with their energy bills. If they're not on food stamps, let's see if we can get them on food stamps, things like that. So we are referring out a lot, and that's a piece of our coaching program as well. The next slide is just about disability etiquette and just a few additional resources, some of the information that I got for these slides. If you haven't heard of JAN, the Job Accommodation Network, it's a great site. You basically type in the disability and the problem, and it gives you a solution. Whether it be like working in a restaurant, if somebody is unsteady, we'll talk about, different ways to make it accessible for that individual, whether it be, the correct shoes, bars, whatever it may be. Definitely check out that site. It's great. We refer to it a lot, but we also refer to our assistive technology folks over at Easter Seals as well for their expertise as well. FDIC, the Money Smart curriculum, is one that we use often, and I got some of my facts and figures from there. For applications and for the Iowa folks out there, feel free to email me if you do have direct questions, or if you've got somebody kind of brewing in the back of your mind that you want to talk about, this is how you apply for a loan at iowaable.org. You can do it directly online with the individuals you're working with, or they can do it. You can download an application directly off of our website, or you can call us and we can mail one out. And this just talks a little bit about how our application process works. We do a loan call, and we're looking at everything from income to expenses, right down to haircuts and cat food and cat litter and all of those things. We take a look at what's left at the end of the month, see if there's room in there for, the need that they came to us for. We take a look at all of the collection accounts, if there are any, and start that financial coaching right away. This slide here, I think, is going to be really helpful for the folks that are not from Iowa on this webinar. This statewide, and I was supposed to say statewide, I just realized there's a typo, I apologize. The statewide AFP program, RESNA Catalyst Project. So if you click this link, the resnaprojects.org, all contacts, that's going to be your resource for, AFP programs similar to ours throughout the country. Not every single state has one, but most do. They all might be a little bit different in the ways that they, are offering their services, but overall, you can at least get some information based on the state that you're in if you haven't heard of them yet. And that is all I have.
Great. Thank you so much, Jill. I was furiously taking notes myself and posting a bunch of the links that you referenced in the chat box. That ends, obviously, your formal presentation, but we've got, time set aside for conversation, to ask questions. Operator, would you please instruct anybody on the phone how they can ask a question?
Gladly. If you'd like to submit a chat question, you can go ahead and type it in the chat window and select to whom to send a chat message to, and please select moderators. If you have called in, you can also press 7# on your phone to queue up for verbal questions.
Great. So we'll give some people time to think up some questions. But I'm curious. So, Jill, you talk about people with disabilities being really underbanked and unbanked, and I'm curious if you can kind of walk through our audience who might not really understand how come somebody could get by without a bank or without, a debit card. If you can kind of talk through, how and why people don't make, full advantage of the financial services that are available to them.
Yeah. So a lot of the folks that we're working with are, like I mentioned earlier, on a Social Security income, and maybe they're living on a food stamp income, and those come on preloaded cards now. So I think some people think that there's no need for a bank account. Or maybe folks have had a bank account, but it was mismanaged because they hadn't been educated on how to properly manage that account. And that's a key component, too, because when folks, aren't secure in that system, they're going to leave that system. Or maybe they wrote some checks and they were harassed about the checks, and now they're in collections and they don't know how to deal with them. And going back to that bank is just going to be, a big problem because now they owe all of this money. I feel like banks today are working more with folks on that and trying to promote setting up bank accounts and making them more accessible to folks with lower fees and things like that. But I think a lot of times it's just that people don't know how to do it, or they've never been taught how to do it, or they're just fine with everything on their card.
Mm-hmm. Great. And I appreciate what you said about, if you don't know the answer or don't have the expertise, knowing who to talk to. And I know that nationally, one of the big organizations that's done a lot of work around financial security and people with disabilities is the National Disability Institute. And I'm actually just about to post in the chat box their financial education toolkit, which I think could be useful for either folks from the workforce system who are on the call today or advocates, and it kind of gives a pretty thorough rundown of different challenges. So dialing in again, actually, quickly, operator, do we have any phone questions?
No phone questions currently.
All right. Well, then I'm just going to keep asking all the questions I want to ask, and please, anyone on the audience, chime in when you want. So, Jill, I'm really curious about transition age youth, and particularly transition age youth with disabilities. Kids who are, just finishing up high school. Either they're going to get their completion certificate or they're going to get their high school degree. So, I'm just curious, what does that financial coaching or education conversation look like? Are there parents involved? Do you just sit down one-on-one with the young person? Just kind of walk me through how that works and how does that integrate into the transition process overall?
Sure. So a lot of the folk rehab counselors are referring folks over to us to at least start these initial conversations to get this going, to start thinking about becoming an adult and what that means. One big piece that we do every year is the Youth Leadership Forum, and that is a huge event. There's, I don't even know how many students, but students from all over the state come and stay at Iowa State University for, I believe it's a full week, and we're there one day doing a piece of financial education, and then we're there exhibiting at the resource fair when the parents come and, pick their child up from the week and they look at all the resources that are available. And we're hoping next year we're going to be speaking with them again using the Money Smart curriculum, kind of as a opener to, hey, have you thought about money? Are you going to go to college? Do you need help with student loans? Do you know how to apply for them? Have you done any kind of credit building yet? Have you thought about this? Do you have a credit card? Do you have a debit card? Do you have a bank account? So we're kind of looking at those next step pieces. Most of the folks that are at the groups, they don't have bank accounts. So we're engaging, that conversation, and then when their parents come, then they come and meet with us, and they're saying, oh, yeah, this is really important stuff. And, yes, we can sit down with the parents and the individual, the transitioning youth. If they're over 18 and want to do it themselves and they don't have a guardian or anything like that, we can absolutely just do it with them. But a lot of the credit building is geared towards that age group.
Okay.
Start building relationships and knowing how to make a payment, knowing when your payment is due, and how to make that payment, whether it's through a check or a money order, an ACH that we pull directly out of your account. It's the learning process of how to pay a loan back.
Gotcha. Wonderful. And I'm curious, so you mentioned that part of how your foundation got started was through assistive technology, and that's still a part of what you do. So I'm wondering, could you give our audience a few examples of the types of assistive technology devices that you've been able to provide or finance?
Absolutely. We do a lot of hearing aids. We work with several audiologists throughout the state, and as you guys know, hearing aids are just ridiculously expensive. Insurance typically doesn't pay for them, and they're really hard to obtain for folks. A lot of audiologists do in-house financing at about 21% interest, or 20-ish% interest. So we are that accessible borrowing option at 8% interest for hearing aids. For anything secured is 8%. And so we're actually able to hold that hearing aid for collateral. Other examples would be for, we've done a couple of accessible bikes for folks to be able to do ride-bri. And those of you not from Iowa, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a week-long bike ride across the state of Iowa every August through Adaptive Sports. Couldn't spit that out for a minute. Adaptive Sports Iowa has a team of folks that, goes the entire week and has fun. And so we have provided loans for things like that so that, people can get out in the community and be part of a group. We have done things like dentures. I don't know how someone would feel about going to get a job if they are not happy with their teeth and can't smile. So we were able to assist someone with a set of dentures. We've done scooters, medical equipment, pieces of medical equipment, CPAP, like I mentioned earlier, orthotics for shoes. Our minimum loan is $100, so we have done something as small as a battery for a wheelchair, power chair.
Oh, wow.
We have another individual who runs his own business from home. He's a consultant through several universities, and he's blind, and we were able to provide him a loan for the computer screens that he needed for the magnification, and most recently the e-sight glasses, which I don't know if you've heard of. It's kind of a new thing, and he can now see 20/40, his 20/40 vision with his e-sight glasses.
Oh, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, so as far as assistive technology goes, it really is. There are millions of pieces of equipment for assistive technology.
Great. So, operator, any phone questions?
No questions.
Okay. I'm guessing Jill answered everybody's questions, but I still have a few that I'd like to touch before we kind of wrap up today. So you mentioned, Jill, that people with disabilities start businesses at a rate, what was it, two times as much as those who their peers who don't have disabilities. So I'm curious. Two questions with that is kind of why do you think obviously, I believe very powerfully in, the abilities that people have and, the fact that people, need a chance and they will create their own chance if they aren't able to find it. So I'm curious, what kind of, I guess the question would be, what kind of initiative or, what is it do you think that about people with disabilities and their lived experience helps them find that entrepreneurial spirit? And then two, what are the types of, either self-employment options or micro businesses that you've helped Iowans with disabilities be able to find?
Yeah. So I have to give some credit to the staff that are working with folks, whether it be case managers, family members, to pull that out of somebody to even think about starting their own business. It's scary. I mean, if I thought about quitting my job and starting my own business, it's a very scary thing. But there's a lot of services out there like Folk Rehab, the Small Business Association, that helps folks with business planning. And I think that's the most important piece so that we can put all of these thoughts that we have in our head down on paper and see if it's logical. In terms of micro businesses, I think you said it best. People are creating their own chance to do what they want to do. I have worked with folks with physical disabilities that just couldn't work anymore. They couldn't work under the standards that they were expected to work. I have an individual in Waterloo, Mr. Martin, who he was working general labor, and his back is really bad, and his boss didn't understand when he needed to sit down. He was, having to leave for doctor's appointments, and he was, it was frowned upon. Why is he always sitting down, or why is he always at a doctor's appointment, whatever it may be. Well, he had some disc issues in his back. So he decided to work on his own terms. He can sleep as late as he wants to sleep. He can work as many hours as he wants to work. He's on his own clock. And he now has a food truck. And he is able to go to whatever event that he wants to go to or whatever place that, is allowing him to come. I'm sure he's worked with different gas stations and things like that of, can I sit here? But he is operating a food truck on his own terms. He preps the food when he wants to prep it, and then if he has an event coming up, and he's his own boss, so it's an empowering feeling for him. We have another individual, very very similar story. He had some physical disabilities as well, and he's a painter. We provided him a loan for a vehicle, business vehicle, and just being able to paint when he wanted to paint. He would take the jobs that he was capable of doing rather than the jobs that put him up too high or made him feel unsafe or that maybe the days were too long, whatever it may be. He's able to do it at his own pace.
Wonderful. All right. Well, last call. Any phone questions, operator? I'm going to guess that's a no. All right. Well, Jill Crosser, thank you so much for presenting to us today. Thank you very much for talking about the wonderful work that the Iowa ABLE Foundation is doing. I seriously encourage everyone who is on this webinar or who is going to be listening to this audio recording, which will be available on social media in a few days, to really check out their work, kind of learn more about what, financial education, financial security, and entrepreneurship can really mean for people with disabilities. Thank you very much for talking with us today, and I learned a lot, and I appreciate it. Next, I want to invite everyone who's on the call today to join us for our next scheduled webinar, which is going to be Tuesday, November 22nd at 1:30 p.m. And we're actually going to be kind of dialing way back and going 50,000 foot and talking about Ernst & Young, the kind of global accounting firm, and their initiatives around diverse abilities and mental illness and addiction. We're joined by their ability strategy leader, Lori Golden, who has been really a champion for change in the corporate world and who has really done some interesting initiatives around mental health and substance abuse. So I encourage everyone to join us for that webinar on November 22nd. We also are in the works for 2 more webinars in December, one about mentoring and youth with disabilities, and the other one about the Bridges from School to Work program. Everyone who's on our mailing list will be getting invitations and information in the days ahead. Lastly, thank you so much, JP Morgan Chase, for helping us provide these webinars for free. Thank you all for joining us, and that concludes our webinar for today.
Thank you so much.